Alongside Rob Lewis and Brent Hubbs, I'm Austin Price for the Rocky Top Roundtable on this Alabama week. Guys, Tennessee coming off a thrill-a-minute game against Ole Miss. The atmosphere at Neyland Stadium was second to none. This team continues to fight. They had some setbacks, some self-inflicted, some not, and they just continued to battle all the way for a full game.
Well, it certainly did. I mean, it was a entertaining game. I mean, obviously there's a lot of talk about what happened in that 22-minute delay, but when the ball was in play and the game was going, you can't fault this team's effort, and you can't fault the atmosphere that was going on. Rob, I'm not a big light show guy typically, but I thought the intro and the way that they did things was really good. And once you got into the game, this team is winning fans over every time they go out on the field.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I'm with you. I normally, think all the bells and whistles, presentation stuff is a little overblown, but I thought that was really cool on Saturday. And as a guy who's got a couple young kids, they thought it was very cool.
Yeah.
Which, recruit age. And I think that resonated with the younger generation. And to your point about fans getting behind this team, 24-9, things weren't going well, and there's no quit. It's pretty evident that they like playing for this guy, the players like playing for their head coach, and they played an exciting brand, and I think fans it was evidenced by the bodies in the stands the other night. They're behind this team.
For me, I kind of waver in between the tradition, because I love the tradition of it all, but I also love the new age. So I do like the bells and whistles, but I only like them if you're going to do them right. And I felt like Tennessee's administration, the football program, they did it the right way. Like, it was different than other people. Like, it was super well done. So kudos to them. This is a game against Alabama this week as we turn the page, where you're coming off a game where you gave up basically 200 yards rushing to Matt Corral. Alabama's got a young quarterback in Bryce Young who can make plays with his feet. He's not the biggest guy, so I'm not sure he wants to take a bunch of shots. But Tennessee really struggled with Corral. Now, maybe that's because they focused so much on trying to shut down the passing game that they allowed him to have some alleys and avenues to run the football. But Tennessee can't do this right here, against Bryce Young on Saturday, or it could be another long night, because Alabama's a pick-your-poison type offense too.
Well, and I don't think Alabama and Bill O'Brien, the offensive coordinator, have any desire to run by design their quarterback the way Lane Kiffin was committed to running Matt Corral on Saturday when Ole Miss was in town. But to your point, Austin and Rob, I think when you look at it, Tennessee's got to do a better job of containing guys. That they cannot allow the quarterback to run around and squirt around and put the stress on the secondary. I just don't see them designing as many plays for quarterback runs the way Ole Miss did.
He's not going to carry the ball 30 times like Corral did, and that was, there was some of that was quarterback scrambles, but most of it was, third and whatever, and him taking off. It wasn't. And Alabama definitely does not Bryce Young taking a hit like that, like he did several times. But this is what killed Tennessee, him just taking off up the middle. And it was kind of, it got to the point, Austin, me and you were sitting beside each other in the press box. You just expected it. 3rd and 8, here he goes. Well,
and he took one too many shots, which is why he's, super questionable for their game against LSU this weekend. Tennessee did get, Matt Corral to throw a pick on Saturday, which he had not done all season long. Trayvon Flowers, made a really nice interception for Tennessee. This is a Tennessee that, they turned it over on special teams, but, for the 4th consecutive conference game, did not turn it over offensively against Ole Miss.
Well, they're taking care of the ball. They're limiting some of their penalties. They had some critical ill-timed penalties on Saturday night, which cost them on offense. But you're right, they're taking care of the ball. I think defensively, they let the quarterback run too much, and they gave up too many yards there. But Rob, when you see what Omari Thomas is doing, and you see what they're doing in their front 7 and their front 4 in particular, and the growth there's a lot of positive encouragement about what they're getting out of their defense. Now, they got a heck of a challenge on Saturday against Alabama, but this is a defense that is far exceeding any expectation I had for them.
Oh, same here. Leaving spring practice, I thought they might be one of the 3 or 4 worst defenses in the SEC, and that's not close to being the case. They're in the top half of the SEC, and most of the numbers, they're giving up a little over 130 yards a game rushing. And that's would play in two of the best rushing offenses in the country in Florida and Ole Miss. I mean, Ole Miss put up some numbers, but that was almost all corralled. And the three tailbacks averaged less than 3 yards a carry.
Well, I can toot my horn here. You know as well as I do. I said all summer long I thought Tennessee's defense would be better than everybody thought. But no one expected them to be what they've done at this point. Like, to give up 30 points to Ole Miss. Ole Miss scores 30 and a half on a lot of teams. Only give up 31 the entire game.
Really
only 7 in the second half.
They gift wrapped it themselves.
Well, I you're exactly right, and I've said that. But then you go back and they did drop a touchdown at one point. So it's like 6 one, half dozen the other. But either way, like, this defense is, and again, I keep making the joke about there's no bullets in the gun. They're just turning it over and beating them with the butt of the gun. I mean, like, it's kind of true. Like, I mean, they don't have a lot of depth. The guys that are playing at linebacker, no one would have pegged them to be what they are. And Aaron Beasley, the type of play that, Brian Jean-Marie is getting out of him, I mean, it just goes back to, like, when kids are bought in and they're coached up and they're prepared, it gives them a real opportunity to overcome some deficiencies, whether it be depth and or talent.
Well, I think the biggest thing is the buy-in. We heard that from Theo Jackson on Tuesday when he talked about the positive energy and the coaching and not just getting cussed out all the time. This team has moved past the previous staff for the most part. But there was a little subtle, or not so subtle jab in there. But this team has bought into this staff, Rob, and I think that's very obvious.
No question. I mean, we've talked about it a lot. It's the whole feeling when you get in that building and get around those kids is so much different than it was a year ago. And I think individually, I think kids liked Jeremy Pruitt for the most part, but and I'm not harping on Jeremy, but I just think Josh Heupel has come in and he has been able to create an environment that's, I'm not saying it's all kumbaya because I think he gets on guys, but there's a feeling of positivity over there that I think starts at the top, and I think he was very conscious in the need to cultivate that when he got here.
Yeah, I mean, the difference is Josh Heupel's never criticized his roster publicly. Brett Bielema in Illinois this week said, I don't have anybody in the two deep that is doing anything of people we inherited that are doing anything. They're just sitting around. He absolutely eviscerated the people he inherited this week, middle of the season. Josh Heupel's made it very clear from day one this was his football team, and he was going to cultivate it and create it that way, regardless of who he recruited or didn't recruit it or whatever, and it's paying off for this team.
Yeah, I love analogies. I equate it to, he's your teacher that, isn't going to let you watch movies in class every day, but if you do what you're supposed to do Monday through Thursday, you might get a movie on Friday. You might get a movie on Friday. You look at this game, Tennessee versus Alabama. Tennessee's the prohibitive underdog. The biggest question is, will Hendon Hooker play? He's done more through the first part of the week in practice, Brent, than most people thought he would, which at least gives the hope that he might be able to go. What percentage does he got to be, though, for you to play him? For
me personally, he'd have to be really, really close to 100%, and I would have to have some real assurances that he's not going to further injure himself, because I think for Tennessee that Kentucky game is a much different type game. And listen, I'm not for mailing it in. Okay, I'm not one of those guys, Rob. But I don't want to put a guy out there, and you can't put a guy out there who's going to further risk injury, or you might not have him in 2 weeks against Kentucky, which is a much better matchup for you.
I just think you have to look at the big picture. I'm with you. You don't mail it in. You put you try to win the game, but if if it's a situation where he's got to gut it out, then you rest him, because you can win the Kentucky game. You can't win this game.
And listen, what's the advantage you got to ask yourself this question also. What's the advantage to playing him if he can't run it 10, 15 times a game?
That's a good point, especially if there's no Cade Mays, if there's no Cooper Mays.
They've been sacked 11 times the last 2 games. He has with a healthy leg.
With a mobile quarterback.
Right.
And not playing great defenses.
Yeah, I agree, but that's maybe the biggest point.
Yep, absolutely.
Then Alabama's got a little bit better quality of defensive linemen than Ole Miss and or the
South Carolina and or Missouri.
The three of us are better defensive linemen than what Missouri have. That's the Rocky Top Roundtable for this week. He's Rob Lewis and Brent Hubbs. I'm Austin Price.